Hi everyone, hope you can hear me okay. You can use your chat box if you can't. But welcome to Wild Apricot's expert webinar series. We're thrilled to have today's expert webinar presenters, Elizabeth Engel and Anna Caraveli, joining us today to talk about member engagement and how we can do that better by using an outside-in approach. Before we get started, I just want to introduce myself, and I see a bunch of people logging in. So my name is Lori Smith. I'm the community manager here at Wild Apricot, and on your chat is Terry Ibel. He's our content manager. He can help you with any technical issues you're having, and we'll also be taking your questions throughout the webinar. So we do encourage you to share your comments, ask away, and we will take breaks throughout the presentation to share what you're saying. Otherwise, you are all muted. If you're on Twitter, we're also live tweeting and using the hashtag WildWebinar. So you can join us on Twitter. You can even ask us questions there, and we'll bring those in. A quick reminder, if you are earning your professional accreditation, you can earn a credit by attending today's webinar. And we won't get into that now, but if you want to learn more, Terry can share the link in the chat box, and that's something you can look into after. And yes, we will be recording this and sending it out in a follow-up email tomorrow. You'll get the slides, the recording, and any links that we mentioned throughout the presentation. So you can just sit back and relax and enjoy today's presentation. And I want to encourage you to stay to the very end today because we have a special announcement. And I'm just going to leave it at that. You'll just have to wait till the end to hear what that is. So this is something we asked you to do when you registered for the webinar. We asked you, what do you know about the outcomes your members are currently seeking? And then what are the things you're doing about that currently? And we want to share a couple of your answers, and I won't go over everything, but most of you, your members are seeking to learn something. They're looking for information, support, training, career prospects, or networking. Sometimes it's discount, social interaction. They're looking to connect with other people. And then here's what some of you are doing. So programs, workshops, some of you are hosting webinars just like this and bringing in expert speakers. Providing discounts is a great incentive. And then some of you have developed these processes to listen to your members, analyze their needs. So focus groups and surveys. And that's what we're going to talk about today. So speaking to that is Elizabeth Engel, and she's the CEO and Chief Strategist at Spark Consulting. She has over 18 years of experience helping associations grow, and she speaks frequently on this topic. And outside of work, she likes to dance, play music, cook, and blog about the Philadelphia Eagles. So welcome, Elizabeth. We also have Anna Caraveli, and she is the founder and managing director of the Demand Networks, and she's run tons of workshops and provides services to help associations increase their membership. And Anna is also the author of The Demand Perspective, Leading from the Outside In. This is a book you can get on Amazon, and again, we'll share that link in the chat box, and you can look into that. And so she's really the expert on this topic. And then outside of work, Anna is a fanatic Washington Capitals fan. So she's a hockey fan. And she also loves reading, books, and dogs. So welcome, Anna and Elizabeth. Thank you so much for joining us. You're now unmuted. You can talk, and I'm just going to change presenter control over to you, Elizabeth.
Excellent. Thank you so much. All right, let me show my screen and pull up the slides, which hopefully now people can see, yes?
Yes, we can see them.
Excellent. So, Lori, thank you for the introductions. And yes, today we are here to talk about leading engagement from the outside in. So a little bit of background on this. As Lori had mentioned, Anna wrote a book that came out for ASAE about a year ago called The Demand Perspective, Leading from the Outside In. And as she was working on that, she and I were having some conversations that were sparked by the fact that both of us write about member engagement a lot for our respective blogs. And we realized that we had kind of a shared or similar perspective on this topic. So while she was working on the book, we started talking about looking at this idea of leading from the outside in as more specifically applied to the membership relationship. And so we decided that we were going to dig into that topic more deeply via a white paper. And I, through my consulting business, do a white paper series. This was the 6th one that came out. And so the Leading Engagement from the Outside In white paper digs deeply into the topic of leading from the outside in as relates to membership. And you will see at the bottom of every single slide there is a bit.ly link that is to the white paper, which you are welcome to download for free. And we hope you will do that. So we decided to dig into this topic of engagement. And we had a key question when we did this, which was that engagement is obviously critical to associations, yet we generally aren't doing a great job with it. And we decided to ask ourselves, well, why not? Why are we having trouble with this? Our thesis is that associations aren't doing engagement well because the way we tend to think about engagement is backwards. So stop wearing your association hat for just a moment and think about your own personal self and what engages you in your daily life. And feel free to share your thoughts on this via the chat box. But what engages you deeply in a day-to-day basis in your personal life? So when we asked ourselves this question, what we realized is that the answer was things like a wonderful art exhibit, which is what these images are from. It's an exhibit that is here in Washington, D.C. right now, or a book or a movie, a conversation with a good friend, a great meal, social media applications like Pinterest and Instagram and Tumblr and Facebook. These are all things that engage us personally. And the key there is that no one has to convince you to do these things or try to sell you on going to see an exhibit or having lunch with your best friend or calling your mom, right? Because you want to do these things inherently because they meet particular needs that you have. So the issue here is that under our current model of thinking, under the sort of existing model of thinking about our associations, we tend to put the association at the center of our focus. Now, for those of us who are employed by associations, this makes sense because we do association management 40+ hours a week, so the association really is pretty central to our lives. But what that means is that we end up looking at things from our own internal perspective. So we think about our need to fill committee seats, or our revenue goals, or our own internal assessments of value, or our own internal ideas about what engagement means. But the problem with that is that your association's needs and goals do not motivate people. So if we really want to engage our members and other stakeholders and help them, we have to completely flip our thinking around and put them and their goals, needs, and wants at the center of our thinking. Not the association, but the member. So it's not about wordsmithing just with the right message. It's not about what the association wants. It's not about filling the committee seats and hitting particular registration numbers or membership numbers or anything like that. It's about the value that the member gets out of the interaction with the association. We engage our audiences by uncovering their most pressing problems and learning about their most important outcomes, and then creating solutions to address those problems and achieve those outcomes. Anna?
Yeah, hello everybody. Thank you for joining us. From inside out to outside in, an inside out organization is focused on its product. And by that, we also mean events, processes, ideas. It's focused on itself. And the outside in organization is focused on customers and how to help them solve the problems, become successful, no matter what that takes, whether it takes the legacy programs or whether it takes simply making something faster or more convenient. The focus is on solution. So this may sound abstract, and some of you may be wondering what it has to do with you, but it has everything to do with everything we do. It becomes the basis for how an organization behaves, where it focuses, how it's organized. For example, think of it. When you plan a new direction or a set of new priorities or a new model, do you automatically convene a committee? Do you go to a room to have a strategic planning exercise? Or do you interview your members to find out where they want to go, what's in their mind? When you design a new product, do you make it absolutely perfect internally with your internal committee or staff retreat? Or do you take a concept, get feedback from members, test it with a select group of members, and improve it while you test it? How are you rewarded, or how do you reward people for your association? Is it for performing a function, or is it on the basis of member outcomes? When you have staff meetings, do you talk about your achievements or your problems or your next annual meeting, or do you talk about your members? Do you compare notes? Do you say, okay, what have you learned? What does it mean? Or here's an opportunity. So the orientation, the focus is what drives the organization, and a lot of the times it is not a conscious thing. It becomes part of the fabric of your everyday life. You don't even recognize it. It's not uncommon, and it actually is a big problem to engagement when associations think they're already customer-centric, because they think of a new product or a new series or gesture, like inviting people to comment. But when your automatic instincts are to turn inside and not to do things collaboratively with members, then sooner or later it's going to catch up. You will not have the kind of insight and connection with members that you will allow them to engage them. So that, could you do the next slide?
Oh, sorry about that. Yes, there we go.
So what is the problem? What is the obstacle to engagement? First of all, that, as Elizabeth said and I said, you figure out that we believe that engaging others is not a matter of figuring out the perfect words or the perfect event or the perfect value proposition. It's not really up to you. What engages people, what engages you, is when you think there is value, concrete, specific value to something that matters to you the most at that specific time. If something resonates with what's in your mind, with what keeps you up at night, you will engage. So it is a matter of providing. Engagement is a matter of providing the kind of unique and highly relevant value, and engagement will follow. Now, what does this require? To be able to really be inside your members' mind at all times, because members are not static dots in a landscape. They're living human beings like you and me, and they change. Their needs change in the course of the day, let alone in the course of the year. This requires extraordinary and relentless focus on your customers, to understand, to interact with them, to see the world, to immerse yourself in their world. And the problem is that associations are set up for production and efficiency, for constantly churning out events that organize around the annual conferences. They are constantly running after deadlines. There's no time to concentrate on member needs and to really get inside their minds and participate in their lives as a participant observer. They're not set up for speed. They're not set up for convenience. They're not set up for customization and craft and solution. So what this means is that if you try to engage through through events or gestures or actions, while your whole organization's orientation is on its own products, you will not succeed a whole lot. So it's true that the events that are supposed to be engaging, that are organized from the perspective of the association, such as rewards or volunteer roles, awards, we can't say that they're uninteresting. We're sure that there are people who are interested in it. They feel attracted, but so it's not a question of whether they enjoy them, but all of these are things that represent what keeps them up at night. Do you want to be in the life of your members? Do you want to be nice to have or essential to what is important to them and to their professional success? So there is a sweet spot. Not all engagement is of the same value. If you simply engage people in an interesting event, it's nice to have, but you can live without it. So when time for renewal comes, if something more relevant comes up, or if you are financially strapped, then you drop your membership. So you need to uncover the sweet spot, the part at any given time that matters the most. And if you add value to it, you engage people. So that means that to engage people, you have to be engaged by them, curious, wanting to spend time, and to have capabilities for engagement. So to engage, you have to become engaging, capable of engaging others. And could I have the next slide? Yes. So your orientation, whether it's toward people or toward solutions and customers, has to do with the way you do your work and the way that you reward and the way you organize. On the left column is how a product-centric organization is organized, and on the right-hand column is customer-centric. And you could see that the thrust of the product-centric is to create the best product for the customer. The other one is the best solution for the customer, which means a whole lot of different things. It means that you're not wedded to your legacy programs. It doesn't take you a year, to initiate something new or to toss something old. It means that you don't always rely on products. That sometimes solutions mean brokering a relationship. So the product-centric is always after new products. You know that how many times when we experience retention problems or recruitment problems, the go-to solution is new products, new programs, a new initiative, new strategic goals. Whereas the customer-centric is depth. It's how do you add value to the existing customer? How do you create packages that target even more closely what keeps them up at night? Creation, again, is through products, new features, new applications, as opposed to increasingly hitting the target and customizing. And of course, the organizational frame is in silos, that you organize by product, the certification department, the seminar department, the marketing department, as opposed to customer segments where people across department come together for a solution. And that has roles, staff roles such as account managers. You work in teams, but again, it's not simply a rhetorical issue. It means that the organization counts your success and the profits different. Customer PLAs rather than association. There is a focus on relationships and deepening relationships rather than selling products and keeping relationships the same. The measures, the column on the left is more quantitative. The column on the right is more result-oriented. Satisfaction, lifetime value, and also the customer share. Not all customers are the same, and the customers that have deeper relationship, deeper engagement, maybe buy more expensive strategic packages of solutions rather than commodity-based buying. They're the ones that are most valuable, and you focus engagement efforts on them. The rewards are important. How many times do we, as organizational leaders, do we set a goal or make a beautiful statement, but we don't back it by rewarding it? The product-centric association may talk about how it values cooperation and creativity, innovation, but the rewards are usually for efficiency, meeting deadlines, managing correctly, as opposed to understanding of the market and customer outcomes.
And Anna, I'm just going to interrupt quickly. 2 quick questions. What's the P&L, customer P&L? And you're using the word customer here a lot. Is this the exact same application towards members? We've had a few questions from other associations.
I use customer for member stakeholders. I use them interchangeably, customer, member, stakeholders. And sometimes I do it on purpose because when people think of member, we use the term so much that we tend to think that they behave differently from other customers or other consumers. It's like a special species. The customer P&L is the customer success. How have you helped the customer become more profitable, as opposed to because the more profitable, that means that that you retain that customer, and this customer gets to buy more and more services from you. So the measures are customer based and external and outside in, rather than quantitative and short term.
So can we just replace the word customer with member?
Talk about a lot. Anna, one of the things that you talk about a lot is the whole idea of not so much thinking about the organization's success, but thinking about the success of the audiences that we serve, whether those are members or other stakeholders. How do we help them be successful in their own professions or industries?
Which means also, and we'll go to that later, that we already talked about how this means that you reward staff for the member outcomes rather than how quickly their own efficiency. And it also means, we won't have time to cover it today, but we'll allude to it, is how do you measure engagement? Do you measure engagement by participation in how many people participate? Well, what if they participate in your product programs, but they use a different provider for the things that really matter to them, and they're the ones where they invest the money, and they're the ones that these are the providers that will retain them. So the participation by itself isn't an adequate member of how deeply they're engaged. But if you measure the outcomes, do people come to you for because they know they will grow in revenue or meet potential customers or partners that they could not meet elsewhere, then you've been successful in engaging them. So in short, the point to leave is that to leave with everybody is that engagement is the result of value delivered and the outcomes that it has enabled, and not the association's quality of its products, and not participation. And finally, that engagement does not mean coming up with methods and tricks, but becoming engaged in acquiring capabilities for getting to the heart of what matters to members and delivering outcomes. And in a way, the bigger problem in engagement, the bigger problem is, as we alluded, that associations are the model of the old model of association is not in sync with the way the world runs today and the way that consumers behave. The traditional association membership model assumes, first of all, a one-directional flow of value and relationship. We make, you buy. And therefore, you look at your members mainly as consumers of your own product, and you look at their value short term, sales of specific product, which is very, very limiting. In reality, I mean, look at all of us. I mean, what do we do every day? How do we solve problems? How do we communicate? I mean, we have mass personalization and customization. Where you can you can go to Amazon, you can go and really kind of get the information and the support that you need. We have on-demand services that you pay only for pieces. We have a sharing economy. We have freemium models. We have tons and tons and tons of sources of value and information. So the association's role is not just to be the all-knowing deliverer of information, but it's a very optimistic picture because you have countless of roles. You can be a broker, you can be a curator of information, you could help people apply it, you can partner with all the other sources of value. There are so many more paths to providing value. But you need to look at it in terms of solutions and not of a limited portfolio of off-the-shelf products. In the book that I wrote and in the white paper that Elizabeth and I did, we looked at ultimately not simply at engagement out of context, but we looked at what makes an association, an organization succeed. Why do some succeed and some fail in the same economic circumstances? And in my book, I use Ranjay Gulati, who's a professor from Harvard, who wrote a great book. And he found out that the companies that survive, the economic downturn, and the companies that are thriving today are the ones that are outside in, who are focused on customers and therefore they're flexible about what combination of products, what kind of solutions. So products today have a short shelf life, but solutions are endless. You can use any combination of products, of raw assets to create them, and you can change them continuously as your customers change. So, and today's economy, what is of value is not so much products, because there's so many, but it's solutions. And look at Zappos. He sells shoes like myriads of other providers. But what creates value for the customers is the speed and customer service. And this one sets them apart. And these are the kind of things that generate engagement. Finding what matters. And it could be a small thing. It could be what makes a difference. It doesn't have to be a groundbreaking series or initiative. It could be something like combining and curating the information for them or delivering it faster than competitors. So we're competing on the basis of solutions, and which means innovation, and it means complete immersion in your customers without anything interrupting the direct line to customers. No spending 6 months a year worrying about managing your board. not that you don't have board, but the primary focus is the customer. And instead of that, associations tend to push products, standalone, off-the-shelf products and benefits. So
what about, Anna, what about the organizations that don't push products, but rather services and value in a different way, like networking opportunities and so forth? Can you just kind of address that? Like, how would you innovate and focus on your members' needs in that way when it's not really product focused?
Right. It's coming up with the cases that we bring. And in fact, one of the things that we're saying is rather than look to products for an answer, like what new products, what new line of what certification or what great events and experiences, you look at sources such as relationships, such as networking, and you look at them not as abstract concepts like everybody says that you're networking, but what distinguishes your networking from the myriads of other things. And this is some of the things that the cases will illustrate. But the whole point is that instead of focusing on figuring out the perfect engagement role or event, you focus your whole association in small steps toward the customers. And we'll talk about how to do that. That doesn't mean.
And of course, that all sounds great, so we're going to completely focus on the outcomes that our members and other stakeholders are trying to achieve. But of course, how do we go about doing that? Before I get into telling you how you go about doing that successful focus on your members' outcomes, do we have any questions coming in, Lori?
Yeah, a lot of people had some interesting comments while you were speaking, and I wanted to share. Franz had a few comments, and I think it probably reflects a lot of people. So he sends surveys to members and finds that he gets limited responses, and now he's trying to find other ways to engage them without bothering them. And he found that once he sent the surveys, they not many people reply, or they don't know what to take from it. So any thoughts on, I guess you'll get into the how, but this kind of situation where you're trying to tap into members, and in Paul's case here, he has all types of different members, different languages. What's the best way of doing that? And I don't want to jump ahead in your presentation, but these are the kind of things I'm seeing coming in from everyone.
Yeah, that actually really sets up the next point that I'm going to make very well. So thank you for those of you who actually brought up the topic of, we're doing these surveys and we feel like it's not actually helping us all that much. So to back up for just a second, Anna has referenced this already, but the white paper has 8 keys to leading engagement from the outside in. And it shares those keys through the stories of 11 different organizations. All of them are membership organizations, but not all of them are nonprofit associations. We have a couple of for-profit membership organizations that are profiled as well. But all of these stories share or illustrate one of the points that we make. Now, obviously, we're not going to be able to share 8 keys and 11 stories in a half an hour. We're going to share 3 of the keys today and 3 of the stories that we share in the white paper as well. So the first key that we want to share is this whole idea of focusing on member outcomes. And Anna has already talked about this quite a bit, but we have to stop focusing on what the association wants to accomplish and start thinking about what it is that our members want to accomplish. So, of course, Henry Ford was famous for having said, if I'd asked people what they wanted, they would have said faster horses. And we tend to learn about, and I'm making little air quotes here that you can't see, but we tend to learn about our members through surveys, as had just come up in the discussion in the chat box. And surveys can be problematic for at least 2 reasons. One is that you only get the answers to the questions you actually think to ask, and the second is that we tend to ask the wrong questions. In surveys, we tend to ask people what they want, and we tend to ask them what they think of us. You know, and of course, obviously, Henry Ford, if I'd asked people what they wanted, they would have said faster horses. And Steve Jobs was actually famous for saying people don't know what they want until you show it to them. And so the problem that we find through doing a lot of surveying is that we tend to get a lot of the same old, same old. And of course, that's even assuming that we get people to keep responding to our surveys. And obviously, if the same old was effective, we wouldn't actually have to be having this conversation at all. So instead of asking inside-out questions, I'm going to turn back to Anna.
Right. This was a very good question about the surveys, because that is it goes to the application. How do you apply that? In my book, there is a whole chapter on learning that addresses that specifically and brings cases. But as Elizabeth said, the questionnaires or surveys elicit answers to questions that are already skewed from our perspective. And the point is, you don't need answers. You don't need you don't need to understand what is stated, but what is implied. Because, as Elizabeth said many times, we don't really realize exactly our needs, or and we need some help. We need to bounce ideas. We need to talk to somebody. It's like a therapist to clarify in our minds what is needed, or we can visualize something that we'll never experience. A lot of the answers to questionnaires depend on what people think an association can do. In this chapter in my book, there are cases of learning organizations where they're constantly immersed in their members' lives, and that's how you truly understand what lies behind the stated answers, behind the things that they say. You understand what really they mean, and you get a picture of them as a whole person rather than a frozen moment in time. Questions are very, very important. Look at the questions on this slide. They are questions. Some of them came from questions that some of you asked, but they are the standard questions that people ask. Elizabeth and I were at a marketing conference last year about engagement, and in every panel, whenever it was asked, okay, talk among yourselves and come up with what are the issues, difficulties you have in engagement, and these are the kind of questions people would ask. How can we convince our members? Why don't they join? And in fact, this line of questioning often results to blaming your members. Oh, members are so selfish; they don't want to join anymore. Or what's wrong with them? Can they see our value? So what is the line that you see in all the questions? I mean, how helpful are these questions to your ability to find out what engages people? Could you go to the previous slide? Yes. When you say, how can you convince members? How do you persuade? What these questions have in common is that they're all about you. They're about your needs to lighten your workload, your needs to make sales, your friends' ideas about how to engage members of lines. And as Elizabeth said before, your needs do not motivate. So you will not get to the heart and soul of where your members live through these questions. Okay, now we can go to the outside-in questions. How would you rephrase these questions from the outside in? You could say, what motivates people to want to volunteer? What motivates people as individuals in general? Where do your needs and their interests converge? What are the pressing problems that keep them up at night, and how do they experience these problems? It's one thing to say, They worry that their industry is consolidating into anything to say, well, how is that experienced in their daily life? What could you do to help solve them? How do members, do they engage online? How do they behave online? Many times the answers are right there. You can see how they communicate and how they engage with each other. There was an association that has been rapidly declining that looked at the members' LinkedIn community as a threat and insisted what this association did is when it was losing members is what many association executives would do. They went and brought together committees, and they created a marketing plan. They created an aggressive campaign. They designed events, and they tried to close down the LinkedIn community. So meanwhile, the LinkedIn community membership kept growing, and the association's membership kept declining at an alarming pace. So this association now is almost defunct. If they had looked at the way that the members of this LinkedIn community engage each other, they didn't have products. They solve problems. It was a scientific association. They helped solve problems. They discussed cases. They made business deals, and sold products to each other. If they had looked at their behavior, they could have emulated it or partnered with them to increase the benefits of that community, but through a paying community the association run. So the inside-out mindset, not only does it not lead you to understand your members, but it misses opportunity, because you can't get out of the building assumptions about what members, how they should engage and how they should volunteer, and look at what they actually do and understand how they actually think. So what we suggest is that the tool to use is direct learning from and with members, as opposed to assumptions. And instead of surveys or questionnaires or evaluation forms, interview, observe behavior, listen into member conversations with each other, how they engage a small group in addressing an association problem or testing an idea, co-design and test a new concept. NGA did that. NGA is the National Grocers Association, and it is an association for for grocers that are not the big chains. And the problem, of course, for independent grocers is competing with the big chains, where they have the advantage of size and scale and economy. So the association organized itself around solutions to their issue. And first of all, one solution was the economy of scale, that if you brought groups together and you organized them in certain ways, then they could together form a larger bargaining power than they could independently. But still, that's not enough, and that's many solutions that association find that many of these solutions are abstract. To say that the members want cutting-edge information is still vague. How do they want this information? In what format? What help do they need with applying this information? This is where the sweet spot is. This is what the closer you get to the how, why, when, the closer you get to providing targeted value and thus engagement. So one of the things that one of the problems was that they have to rely on complex networks of resources and suppliers to help them get all the products that their customers need on the shelf on time and at reasonable price. I hadn't realized before I talked to the CEO what a huge problem is to get products on shelf on time. So they need to create alliances, innovative alliance with all these people, with suppliers, with wholesalers. So first of all, the association expanded its membership to include basically all members of the value chain. And by doing this, they recreated the economic landscape and the business relationships that were essential to their success. So this wasn't just a theoretical thing of members, vaguely knowing they could network or take courses or seminars that somehow indirectly would improve their leadership and innovation. But this was by entering the association, you can renegotiate the relationships in your value chain. They created a program called the Trading Partners Program that went even further in brokering relationships. And they use the annual conference for this. So rather than say you can network with people in our annual conference, they created forums where the independent grocers could have strategic discussions with suppliers, wholesalers, and others. And they made a point. They helped sort out, what were potentially good partners. They helped them make appointments, facilitated conversations, and the result was that by the end of the conference, many of these people continued the conversation and ended up with very profitable business deals and partnerships. And here's a indication of the engagement. In 2014, according to the CEO, there were over 330 meetings between members and major suppliers like Kraft, like Kellogg, like Pepsi. So the value that they delivered to both parties increased their participation. And the more profitable the alliance is.
So Anna, there's 10 more minutes just to let you know, giving you a time check.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and I'm going to actually jump along and move us to our next key because we do need to pick up the pace a little bit. So our next key is the idea of building authentic relationships. And we're used to the idea of thinking about membership as a relationship, but one of the differences in outside in thinking is you're not just looking to build a relationship between the association and the member, you're also looking to facilitate relationships between the members and each other. So the association facilitates as well as being a partner to the relationships. We tend to think about, and at least initially, member relationships as transactions. So, we're looking for them to buy membership. We're looking for them to register for our meetings, to come to our professional development programs, to buy publications, to serve on our committees, etc. What we want to encourage you to do is to shift your thinking to membership as a strategic partnership where the two of us, both the association and the member, are focused together on helping them achieve their most desired outcomes. That means we have to get to know them at a deeper level than just their purchasing habits and maybe their posting behavior. We have to become learning organizations with constant curiosity about our members and their worlds and their operating environments, just like happened in the National Grocers Association example that Anna just shared. We have to become sponges for gathering information and have this deep curiosity about what is driving and motivating our members. We also have to be willing to share that information openly and transparently within the association so that the whole organization gets smarter. And we also need, as we're being this sponge for information, to suspend our need for immediate certainty, which means extending the questioning process and being more willing to keep learning before we come to, okay, and this is what we're going to do. What we're trying to do is facilitate this creation of a network of relationships among the entire community. We're not the center of their universe, and that's okay. They need to build meaningful relationships. They, the members, need to build meaningful relationships among themselves and with each other, just like they build relationships with us, and we should help facilitate that process. So another one of the stories that we share in the white paper is of the Supply Chain Management Association of Ontario. And they were in a situation also of stagnant and declining membership. They'd had some staff turnover, and their CEO felt like they had lost the thread of connection with the members. So what she did is she actually went out on what she called a listening tour around the province, meeting with members in their own physical locations all over Ontario to discover what was going on for them. And of course, supply chain management goes across all sorts of industries. So she was learning what was going on in their various work environments, in their need for development in their profession, etc. Now, the end result of this whole listening tour was she was able to rebuild that thread of connection, both with her members, the association itself, with the members, but also these meetings of members helped them rebuild connections with each other. And the result of what she learned from having these conversations, she was able to carry back to the association to start making some additional changes in how they could help serve their members and meet their needs now that they have a fuller understanding. Finally, our third point is harnessing the power of collaborative community. And one of the great things about the idea behind collaborative community is that it takes some of the pressure off the association to be the sole source of value, and to be the sole source of information, and to be the sole source of all these programs, products, and services. What is happening in collaborative community is that we're all working together on the value that the association brings to the members' lives. It is, in fact, a collaborative process that involves all of us, not just the association saying, we're going to create some stuff for you, and we're going to give it to you, and then you can use it. We're actually co-developing with our members the value that the association brings to their lives. What we're actually talking about here is something called a community of practice. And this is a concept that was originated by a guy named Etienne Wegner. It's networking beyond sort of, chit-chatting and finding out, how people are doing and getting to know them a little bit more personally. And not that there's anything wrong with that kind of networking, developing friendships among the memberships. But this is a deeper level of working together. So the keys to community of practice are that there's a shared domain of interest and a commitment to that domain, which is probably the profession or industry that your association is serving. That's the domain. You engage in joint activities around critical goals that build relationships, again, not just through getting to know each other personally, but through working together to achieve important goals. And then, of course, the third key here is the actual practice itself. That's developing shared learning, shared resources, shared information. It's the actual co-creation of the stuff together. So another story that we share in the white paper is of the National Fluid Power Association. Now, many associations have statistics programs that we run for our professions or industries. And the National Fluid Power Association, which is the association that represents people who do hydraulic power stuff, they had plenty of industry statistics, right? And they had all these great online things that you could use, and you could get in there and manipulate stuff and work with data and all that kind of thing. And what they realized is very few of their members actually did that, right? They had all these great tools they put together, and nobody was using them, and they couldn't figure out why. Well, the problem was it wasn't user-friendly. And so they said, well, okay, we've got all this great information. We know people want access to this stuff. How are we going to make something that's better for them, that actually works for them? Well, rather than the association sitting there and working internally and doing something to create stuff and then sort of, working in secret and then, 6 months or a year later announcing, oh, we've got this whole new statistics platform for you, they identified the power users from the old platform that was complicated to use and people had a hard time with and said, can you guys help us actually create something that people can really use? Which is exactly what they did. They worked in a task force with their actual members to create an online tool that was user-friendly, that had easy dashboards, that had kind of an executive level access, when the CEO could log in and see particular information, and then it also had still, the area for the power user that actually wanted to be able to get in and dig into the data, and even that interface, that more complex interface, was still very user-friendly because their users helped them create it, right? They created value together for the entire community by the process of co-development. So again, there's 8 keys in the white paper. The 3 we've talked about today are focusing on member outcomes, creating authentic relationships, and harnessing the power of collaborative community. Before we share our final thoughts, I wanted to see if there were any more questions.
Right, so let me go through some of these comments coming in. Going back a little bit, I want to bring up Jennifer's point because I think this is really common in a lot of situations. So being member focused can be difficult to do when you're pursuing grants, and so suddenly you have to shift your focus to the project outcomes to get the money and so forth. So do you have any suggestions on how you might work with your funder or a grant situation and still be member focused as well?
What are the grants? What is the basis for rewarding grants? Does it have anything to do with what you do for members?
Well, and actually, I think that's a really relevant question because the challenge with grant funding is, of course, once you've secured the grant and are working on the project, you're answerable to the funders more than to the members. And I think that one of the key things is to ask exactly what Anna just has, which is before you pursue the grant, say, okay, one of the criteria, I guess, that you would want to think about in pursuing the grant is this project actually going to help with something that's important to our members, something that's a key outcome for them, a key problem for them, and that might mean that you might have to say, you know what, this particular grant really isn't helping address a key member issue or problem. Maybe it's not the best use of our time to go after this particular grant at this particular time. I mean, that is a challenge.
Yeah, I used to work for NEA, for a funding agency, and the granting organizations do want to see the outcomes for what they did. So as we said, it would help if you work with a funding agency to set up criteria for success, to evaluation standards, but to just, if you remember that the funding agency would be out of business if their grants didn't have any effect, maybe you can work together, take a more active role with building criteria.
Right. I think that's a good point. Create projects that are actually get grants for projects that are member focused in the first point. So one quick question before we wrap up, and if you have more questions, feel free to put them in the chat box, and Elizabeth has very generously agreed to answer some of these questions afterwards in a blog post. So, okay, I'm just seeing Karen's question come in, and I just wanted to see if that was a good one. I think this one from John is a good one. John and both Jeffrey have a situation where, the value is different to every single person, Or in John's scenario, he has a sportsman club that has 15 different disciplines. So how do you deal with the situation where really your members' needs aren't very cohesive, and there's a lot of different needs? Any recommendations for tools around that, or how do you create something that kind of appeases the masses, or makes most members happy, or how do you address that?
Actually, that's a really good point. Value is individual. And so, we talk a lot about segmentation. Sometimes I don't necessarily think we do such a great job of it, but we talk a lot about it. And that's actually that whole idea that there are all these very individualistic understandings of value. That's actually a feature, not a bug. Now, it makes management challenging, you're right. But developing and talking about and thinking about and promoting and working with your members on an individual basis is the right thing to do. That means it's a little bit harder to systematize. You can't just blast out the same information to everybody all the time and assume that it's going to work. But just because it's complicated doesn't mean it's okay to not do it.
And also you may need a different framework for understanding needs and seeing patterns. In my book, I think in a chapter of engagement, we offer a way to segment members on the basis of value and level of engagement. I think it's a matter of, as Elizabeth said, yes, it is individual, and the solutions orientation allows you to accommodate very different needs as opposed to kind of off-the-shelf product lines. But you also have to have a different basis, a different tool for sorting through members.
Okay, and on that note, Anna, sorry, I just want to respect everyone's time. It's 4:02, so thank you so much, everyone, for joining us. If you have more questions, again, just put them in the chat box. We'll keep it open for a bit longer. And I want to thank Elizabeth and Anna for joining us today and sharing this great insight on how we can really switch our heads around to members. And we'll be sending out the recording tomorrow. And I just want to let you know about something we have coming up in April, which really, again, this is our member-focused solution. We asked you what mattered most, and we heard resounding feedback that membership growth, was your biggest issue. So we've put together a summit at the beginning of April, which is going to be a webinar every single day with some of the best digital marketers and marketers in general out there who are focused on helping you develop your membership. So I'm just going to quickly switch to the landing page here, and you can sign up here, and Terry's going to share that, and we'll send that all out in an email. So thanks, everyone, for joining us again. Sorry for running a few minutes over time. Thank you again, Elizabeth and Anna. Great to have you. Wonderful presentation.